so we're going to look at some of these pictures. And, you know, the beginning for me was Holy was understanding that there's a big problem with the Catholic Church and how, no, let's go back. Let's go back. So we've been on this picture for a while, but this is the key picture because as I saw it, it's not the Father, the Son, and a ghost. It's the mother and the daughter and the other. The others are the good men in our lives, men who are not taking away our rights, who contribute 50-50 in the household, our children, you know, trans people, queers, everybody who's gender non-conforming. Those are the others. And here I think we've got like a balanced trinity. That's what I'm trying to get to with the Book of Holy, is how we can all be very balanced and get along together.
Well, I think that's a very good idea.
you know, we sure can't do it as long as we're just under the yoke of the Father, the Son, and a damn ghost.
Whoever that ghost is, anyhow. So, well, let's move on. Let's take a look at some of these pictures because I think the pictures will trigger a whole other conversation.
Sure. And everything in the Book of Holy is a handmade creation. And handmade in this book has two meanings. It's the Handmaid's Tale from the Handmaid's Tale with Margaret Atwood, of course. And then it's all handmade. I designed the book. All the artwork, the original artwork is by me. And then the handwriting on all the pages. This is,
I was going to ask you about that because throughout the book, it is your handwriting that is illuminating the narrative or expanding what a caption could be. What was the idea originally? Because you've been doing this for a very long time. What was the thought process of why you felt your hand, it couldn't be a type font that was being designed. It was actually your hand and your body that was engaged.
I think it kept me from going out and killing men, actually. I really felt like I had to use my hand and be really like serious about what I was doing with this book. This book is an encapsulation of my, not just my years as a photographer, but from my very early years going to Catholic schools and being molded into being this obedient, docile little girl who would, you know, grow up to take care of a family, have children, take care of the family, and do as I was told to do, or else something like this would happen. Well, this picture is about a woman who was disobedient. That's why her husband is beating her. She's disobedient. She took his drugs. These are very rich people. They lived around the corner from Richard Nixon in the toniest neighborhood in New Jersey. And she didn't want to do drugs anymore. She knew it was destroying her life. She hid them. And that's what she got. She got a beating and he was going to destroy her clothes, everything in the house.
You were there.
Yeah.
You're there. You can see Donna just kneeling down with the reflection on the mirror on the left-hand side of the screen. How do you know these people?
I met him in a swingers club. I met them in a club called Plato's Retreat. She was a mother who'd already had 4 children. And actually, she was planning to have 1 more. And her husband, Faith, had felt like her libido wasn't strong enough for him. So he was bringing her to these swing clubs so that she could, you know, become a more exciting woman for him. And it would be exciting for her, is what he told her. So I met them at Plato's Retreat. I was photographing at Plato's, you know, almost every weekend. Or even just going there, getting to know people, because I wanted to know women who felt free. I was looking for that, a really free female.
So you thought that the swingers, that whole trend that was occurring during that time in the liberation of women through the pill, that women were discovering and not dampening down how they felt about their own libido, and that it gave them freedom to explore different things.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you have to remember, back like when all of us were young, as Claudia writes in her introduction, we couldn't even get our own credit cards. We could not get our own credit cards. We were completely subservient, submissive to the man in our life, first to our parents and then to our husband.
All right, so moving on in this picture.
So in this picture, what's happening here is this, I was sleeping down the hall. I was pregnant through the first year of documenting this. So I was living with them. I go from New York to New Jersey. And my daughter had just been born. So I had her in a little bed down the hall and I could hear her screaming. So I put my daughter in the closet and went running down to their bathroom, the master bathroom, and found this was the first thing I saw. This was the second picture on one roll of film. And so I started taking it because that's what I do. I'm a photographer. I'm not a policewoman.
Well, and you're in the middle of this enormous kind of aggression from the man. Did they not mind that you were there?
I had been photographing this family for over a year.
So
they forgot. They were comfortable. They don't even pay attention to me. I'm like one of the family. And I photographed him earlier in the day when he tried to drag her into the house. And I took that picture thinking that would make him stop. And it did. He disappeared. So this was much later in the night. Everybody's sleeping. When I took that picture, he went to hit her again and I grabbed his arm and I said, what the F are you doing? You're gonna hurt her. Right. And he threw me off and said, look, she's my wife. She's disobeying me. I've got to teach her a lesson. So, but that didn't make me stop photographing them. I mean, that's what I want to get across here. I kept photographing because I didn't understand even what I was seeing. I had no idea that this was part of their relationship. I was there to photograph a happy swinging couple and how they were open with their children. I never expected this, never.
So what was the outcome after looking back? I mean, did she end up leaving him?
Yes, she did leave him. She not right away because it's always very hard. You know, she got him actually removed from the house, but then he came back and then she said, come sit in here. Come on. Keep us company here. Here's the yeah. Oh, Rachel, this is great. This is great.
We have a very intimate family here. For those that are watching, listening via the internet, this is a very cozy, wonderful, intimate environment. We will maybe do some pictures after, and it's been so much fun just walking off.
Listen, we should say we're in the Powerhouse. We're in the Powerhouse Command Center here.
Exactly.
And it's really cool here. We've got everything going for us here. And we're very excited to be presenting. And Powerhouse published the book. They had, I would say that they've got a real good deal here at Powerhouse.
Well, why don't we look at a few more pictures, and there's some questions that are also want to be asked.
I was just going to say, let the audience know on Zoom that they can see questions.
Okay, just to say that what we love to do is we know that a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions, and I hope we can answer a good deal of them. But what I'd love for us to carry on is for Donna to run through some of these pictures and give a description, and then we can open up a further dialogue. So
okay,
over
so
to you,
let's
Donna.
go to some other pictures.
Yes, please.
Okay, so then I realized that I didn't want any magazines to publish the story of Elizabeth and Garth because Bank is his real name. I needed to go across the world, especially the USA, and document what was happening with other families. So I tried to get magazines to be interested, but nobody cared. This was the early 80s, nobody cared. But eventually I got Life magazine to give me some airfare money and a film. So I started writing with the cops all over the country and living in shelters and going to batterers programs. So this is a picture from Minneapolis, and he's being arrested for beating her up so badly that he knocked her head against the bathroom tub, a bathtub, and left her unconscious. And it was her little daughter who called the cops. She's crying. The mother's crying. She's so freaking out about everything. She doesn't know what to do. She had to go to the hospital to be treated. But as he was being arrested, I understood in my head that I needed to go talk to him. No matter what, I needed to talk to these guys. I've always spoken to all of the guys in the pictures. That's what's important for people to realize. because I want to understand domestic violence from the man's point of view as much as I want to understand it from the woman.
What did this guy say when he said, why have you?
I waited for him to come out of prison. And when he came out, I said to him, you know, I first of all, I would really like you to sign a release so that I could publish this in Life magazine. And he said, look, I'll kill you if you publish that in Life magazine. And I said, why are you going to get aggressive about it? It's important for people to see that if you beat up a woman, you're going to get arrested, don't you think? And he said, look, let me explain something to you. I'm the son of a battered woman. My father beat my mother. My stepfather beat my mother. I watched her go through all of this for so long. She got help. She's now a director of a shelter in town. I never got the help I needed. I was ashamed of it. I didn't know how to talk to anybody about it. I don't know what to do with this anger and rage in my chest all the time. So he said, we published this picture anyway, but we smudged his face a little bit in Life magazine. The wife signed the releases. Yeah. Okay. Can we see the next one? This is the cover. Can you hold that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the cover of Living with the Enemy.
I'm just going to hold this up.
This woman is very brave right here. This is Rita, really brave woman.
Can you see it all?
But you can see it in the picture.
Yeah.
Just so yeah. So this was amazing because this woman she went back to school to become a nurse to help out her family because her husband was so stressed out from working 2 jobs. But then when she became a nurse and she was working, he was accusing her of cheating on him all the time. So he beat her up every time she came home. And on this morning, he beat her up so badly, he broke her nose, broke her ribs, gave her black eyes, and her children were watching, her 2 boys. And when I got there with the cops, she said, my boys are not even going to be able to recognize me. And she said, I'm pressing charges, even though my mother's begging me not to. I'm pressing charges because this isn't the message I want my sons to have. That's why she's on the cover of Living with the Enemy, because I know she's an unbeatable woman. We can all get beaten up anytime, and it can get worse and worse and worse. But at some point, sooner than later, we have to stand up to it. We have to move back, because if we don't, either she's going to kill him or he's going to kill her. And if she kills him, she's going to go to prison for 3 times longer than he would ever go for killing her.
We're going to move on to some more pictures, because one of the things we're going to be talking about is when Donna first did this book, Living with the Enemy, was quite a long time ago. What has changed for women that have been abused? How is the law helping them or not? We're going to be looking at what happened then, and here we are in the first century.
Yeah.
And what is repeating, and where are the holes in the legal system with the police of protecting these women? But let's run through some more of these.
Yeah,
things.
that's
Everybody
big.
that is tuned in
That's
is
a big
person visual.
Okay, this is, I did a story for Ms. Magazine in 2015, traveling all around to the abortion centers and health centers, which were under attack. They've been under attack for the last 20 years. But we knew the writing on the wall that Roe versus Wade was going to be terminated sooner than later. And what we've seen this was the most important center for women's health in Texas and San Antonio. And I was so moved seeing these are the sinks right here that the right wing and the Christian right were trying to push on abortion centers to have these sinks put into their centers, or else they couldn't give abortions anymore. These sinks are totally unnecessary. Costs a lot of money for the centers to put them in. The religious right has just been pushing these, finding ways to make it impossible for abortion centers to exist. And this was one way that they did it, because these things cost a lot of money to put in, and they're unnecessary. But at the Women's Health Center in San Antonio, they put them in. And I love the quote, because for me, so there's no greater woman who's ever walked the planet than Sojourner Truth. And we all need to walk like Sojourner Truth did. You know, we've really got to be very proactive and start showing we are women. You can't put us down. You can't take away our rights. I mean, she was saying this in the mid-1800s. Why are we so mousy now? That's what I want to know. Why are we so mousy?
I don't know for all that mousy.
Mousy.
Let's look at a few more pictures, because of the evolution in this particular story here of this woman.
Did you not like the woman with the healing hands on her? Let's go back just a second. Yeah. This woman it's in a group of people who are, you know, a huge event, a conference on sexuality. And she had a lot of issues, especially with her fitness, you know, a lot of body issues and a lot of fears. And I don't know why, but she invited everybody to touch her, to hold her, to care about her. So that's what this moment was all about. This was at a lifestyles conference. And this is actually a very healing moment for her.
But she looks very tranquil in the image that you photographed. There's a peaceful look on her face, the expression, and so on.
Yeah, it's intense for her too. Yeah, it's very good for women just to be. Women like to speak about these things that have been embroiling them.
This is an old one.
This woman is one of the most joyful sexual freedom fighters I've ever met. I mean, she left Germany, you know, before she was caught and put into, you know, a concentration camp. And she came with her husband to this country, but she knew she wanted to have a lot of sex. She didn't want to be a wife for the rest of her life. She had her children, but Eve has had over 2,500 lovers in her lifetime.
2,500 lovers.
Absolutely, 2,500 lovers. And here she was learning how to use the crystal wand, which is a beautiful object of sensual pleasure and play that you put inside of you. So she had that, and it was massaging her G-spot, which she had never found. And so she had this incredible orgasm. And it was so beautiful to watch her in the throes.
How did you get engaged in that? I mean, the expression on her face, you're saying,
I want to see all this.
well, we're looking at this. And, you know, if we just cropped just her face, we would not know that this was an orgasmic moment. It could be almost a moment of pain and screaming out. I mean, it's
pain. Well, that's what sex. Have you ever looked at yourself when you're having an orgasm?
Not only.
Well, you need to look at yourself, have a mirror put up, or someone, you know, you're able to see. Maybe bring in I'll come and photograph it.
I haven't had that good an invitation in a long time. I'll have to check with the Irishman I have a relationship with.
Sure, tell him I'm half Irish.
So how old is she in that picture?
In this picture, she was 76 years old, having the greatest orgasm that she'd ever had, thanks to the crystal wand. The crystal wand, which I have. And when I show my pictures, I actually pass it around the room and I let people hold it. You know, and I've never watched it. Never.
I think we need to move to the next
picture.
I think we're spending too much time on orgasmic wands.
It's never too much.
So much fun though.
Yeah. So this picture, this whole thing was like looking at my pictures, making whole. It was about looking at my pictures and trying to figure out how I could put the messages out there that I really want people, everybody, to get. And for me, this is about the predators. And I do see predators everywhere. I really do. People have to kind of prove themselves to me. There's not a lot of people that I trust. Men, women, you know, it takes me a while, but a lot of men in bars are predators. So even though this guy, I mean, he's like, imagine he's just a regular guy, But imagine with your glasses on, you can see whether he's a regular guy or a predator underneath. So the caption here is important. It's called the pickup. And it's all about being aware. Girls, be aware that predators are everywhere. It can be your boss. It can be your teacher. It can be your holy father. It can be the guy who opens all the doors for you. The guy who pretends like he's such a gentleman. Oh, he's going to be your knight on a horse. Yeah, that's the one. No. Don't fall for that so easy. That's what I'm trying to say with this book. Really smell the predators that are all around you. Be smart. Agreed. She thinks he's good looking. Look at she's kissing him and licking his face. She likes him. To her, he looks like Brad Pitt.
I'm not going to comment on that. Let's go to the next picture, please.
And this is the picture that kind of like this. My daughter, she put me through the ringer a lot of times because her dad and I, Philip Jones Griffiths, we didn't follow religion at all. He's a born again atheist, and I just was a non-believer. I converted to Judaism. I was raised Catholic, and then I became just a non-believer. But Fanny always had a fascination with the icons and the Jesus on the cross and then bleeding, just crucifixion and stigmatas. And she was absolutely obsessed with it. And this was in my grandma's house, who was the kind of woman who walked with a rosary in her hands and was always, praying. And so this is what it's all about too. And I'll just read. Fanny felt the pull despite the lack of encouragement, because in my eyes, the church is a thief, stealing women's autonomy and exploiting children's innocence. And the proof is in the designation of power of the Holy Trinity. So this picture sums it all up.
So you're coming back to the Holy Trinity where we started in the beginning of the conversation. And the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, whoever that ghost was. And now we have a very different Trinity that you have designed very carefully, and it's reflected on the cover of the Holy Book, which is the mother and the daughter and the others.
Right.
And what do you think the response has been, to those that are more religious from the background where you come from, recognizing that women actually played a role in the evolution of religion?
Oh, for sure. Women have been the foot soldiers of the patriarchy since the beginning of time. A lot of women have a problem with this book. A lot of
I was curious.
And religious and well-meaning, good women have a big problem with this because they support the idea that all women should be submissive to the head of the household, to the head of the church, to the head of the country. They support the patriarchy. The patriarchy would not still be so dominant if women did not support it.
Okay, I get that point, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. Let's move on to a few more pictures, and then I'm going to ask some other questions and also the Q&A. I'm sure people are very anxious. I love this picture. It has so many different messages going. And can you tell us a bit about...
This was right after 9/11, and there was a little club in Tribeca where I'm from, and Amy Shapiro is a performance artist, and so she came out to perform her, it's like her ode to her greatest fears. And definitely patriotism is one of her great fears, because that's really what caused the whole 9/11, and then the rush to bomb Shahina on Iraq. And also women's rights. She felt like, there was this assault on women and on people all over the world. So this was her acting that out, and I love the gas mask. And then she's holding up an apple with blood coming out of it in the performance, which was symbolizing the and the attack on the World Trade, which was an attack on all of us. straight woman in Madrid. I was there in 2017, and all of a sudden I heard a lot of screaming and shouting, and ran out to the main streets and saw all of these women carrying their signs, you know, like standing up for their rights, because they were in the middle of a new government. It was very right-wing, very conservative, and again, abortion rights were under attack, and they knew that they were going to lose it. I mean, Spain's a very Catholic country, and they don't want, women were saying, not one step back. And that's what they're doing all over the world. I mean, and there's a lot of progress being made all over the world, but at the same time, there's so much violence has increased. Women are being, you know.
So the Carol, question really is, given all the time, these last 50 years that you have been documenting, what's kind of domestic violence, creating an awareness, hopefully providing a voice where people have a trigger to do something to change it. And yet what you're saying with this more recent body of work is that nothing's changed. If anything, there's a regression. So how do we kickstart that awareness again, giving a louder voice, amplifying the voice of what's happening on the global stage? As you know, you and I talked about recently, a few weeks ago in Ireland, there was that terrible murder of a young gal going for a run in the afternoon, and she gets strangled to death. And there was an uproar on the global stage, and then it gets buried to the 8th page, and then it disappears off the news altogether. How do we maintain the momentum? What further work do you want to do with your photography, which is a very powerful voice that can create a kind of call to action to make people aware to change something, whether it's the attitude of the police or the wrong kind of laws that are around on the global stage, you know, and acting local, because, you know, you live here, so maybe we start here and then we roll it out. What do you think?
We can't get complacent. You know, it really can be apathetic. It blows my mind when I talk to, especially white women who don't understand how violent it is out there and how bad it is for young women. How many predators young women today, have to pass through, push out of their way to survive. And you know, like I always think that women should go out in 2s or 3s. I don't really think that women should go out alone anymore. And I'm not being an alarmist, really. I mean, that unfortunately we see what happens if a woman goes out running in the middle of the day. Yeah, some guy comes up behind her just to strangle her, just to have his kicks strangling her, and the police don't find him. That happened about a month ago, right? They haven't found him yet because they don't care. The courts don't care, the police don't care, and so many people who are living in their little white towers, they don't care either because they feel that they're protected somehow.
Okay, let's take a little break, and there's some Q&A questions, but we're not seeing what the questions are. So if you feed them into us. Annie, are you going to do that? Okay, thank you.
Well, so far, we've got a bunch of viewers, but nobody's been asking questions, mostly about the sound quality.
Oh, just tell them, just so you all know, that we're in a place that's right underneath the tracks. The subway.
We got the railway track going here.
Exciting. This is like real Brooklyn, you guys. This is what's that? Yeah. Oh yeah, I gotta talk right now. This is real Brooklyn. We're broadcasting from real live Dumbo, and those are the subways overhead. So you know it's all good. It's all good, and there are a lot of little kids running around. This is a beautiful bookstore here, and everybody's having fun in here. It's still the middle of the day for us.
Of course, with this latest picture that has just been thrown up, it's a bit X-rated, so I don't think there are any young kids.
Kids see this stuff all the time. For me, this is true. This is it. This is like my touchstone picture. This is it, because the system is fucked. The courts are fucked. The religion, everything is set up to put women down. These women are in prison. I photographed them in Missouri. They're in prison for fighting back, for not wanting their partner to keep beating them or raping their children. They got the longest sentences of all. When you fight back, nobody, the courts don't want to hear you. The prosecutors don't care, the judges don't care, the forensic investigators don't care. They'd rather take your children away and give them to the abusers. That's the way it works. And my war is with the system.
Okay, you're talking about your war. So you're saying that the system's fucked.
Fuck.
Fuck.
Say it out. Be
Out in
proud.
there. You're ruining my reputation here. But what I'm saying is looking. We've been looking at a retrospective body of work that covers over 50 years, and you are still campaigning out there saying nothing has changed, everything has remained the same. And you're saying even worse.
Yeah.
Okay, so now with a call to action, certainly the visual imagery, particularly this picture of him.
Let me just explain to you a little bit here. So I made this. This actually is a real lithograph made by Mark Anger, who's an incredible artist. And I was living in Newark at the time and hanging out with the Anger brothers. And so I said to him, I want to create something that really speaks my mind. And don't forget, I am the clit of steel. So I found this old broken lot out in a demolition field, and then we superimposed it on this photograph, and then so it's broken, right? The clit of steel is, you see it broken, but we're just calling it what it is, This is the touchstone picture for me. This says it all.
All right, with this picture, and it
was made in 2006.
2006. So here we are now in 2022.
Yeah.
And we've skipped 2 years because of a little thing called the COVID. What do you want to do photographically, looking into the future, to amplify and to really create some kind of touchstone, using your language, that we can create some change, whether it's amongst the courts and educationally? Should we be doing more on the global stage, but on a very, very local stage, and knowing that each state has women's rights for abortion? What further things can we be doing, being more proactive?
Well, look at all the truck drivers who are like proactive for the anti-vaxxers, and there's like 50,000 trucks that are blocking the way to the city hall in Ottawa. They're like keeping people out, they're beeping their horns, they're making noise, they're making trouble. We need to be like those truck drivers for women's rights. We need to be fighting out in the streets, doing whatever we can. We must be more proactive. We need to be really loud. Taking pictures isn't enough. And looking at books and all of that, we need to get very aggressive and really figure out how to go underground and do our work, the right work. We need to find the perpetrators. We need to get these guys who are raping and beating young women. And in every city, it's going on, countless times a day. And these guys are getting away with it. We, the parents, the mothers, the fathers, are the friends of all these girls. We need to figure out how to stop these guys and how to take them out of the streets, take them out of their houses. They don't have a right to do that.
Let me ask you this. With all the images that you have created, and particularly with Living with the Enemy, have you seen any kind of progress? This is a high awareness book. I believe it was published in Life magazine, which had a circulation. I think back then it must have been at least 35,000. You
mean
so
some of the stories?
Some of the stories.
Some of the stories. Yeah, but so what? I mean, it doesn't matter. People don't take those stories seriously anymore. They were published 20 years ago. And if I hadn't done a book, they would be completely forgotten. And if I hadn't done Holy, Living with the Enemy would have been forgotten. Every photographer that does this kind of proactive, radical, investigative work needs to be finding new ways to make their work relevant and to rally people to do more, to get out there and work with the young people.
Okay,
We have to.
So still using your skill set, which is brilliant, which is photography, but looking at other mediums. You know, you said you were published in Life magazine when Life magazine was a massively popular pictorial magazine here in the United States, and there are others around the world. Now we have social media and the impact that social media has, and how photography is used in Instagram and a whole host of other platforms. Looking outward, irrespective of what has been done historically, how can we be using the modern, more contemporary platforms to be able to amplify this story, to be able to get this out, to get a wider audience to embrace and give a louder voice for these women? There has to be something.
It's very difficult. We've been dumbed down so far. You know, people don't have the patience to really go deep into any stories that are being done. Time magazine is always running really important stories on abuse of women and abortion issues and the violence in other countries outside of the US. People don't really care. They don't care. They want to believe the lies, the misinformation. So we have to figure out a way to do this kind of work in a much more radical underground way. We have to.
When we say underground, that's what keeps it underneath. You know, we're trying to amplify and raise it up. You know, your latest book, Holy, which there's everyone that's reading from afar. It is the most amazing book, and I highly recommend everyone get one and have it as a, you know, if you're a Bible-toting person, it sits on top of the Bible. And if you're not a Bible-toting person, you need to have it and have it by your night table and read it every night. It's really, really important, because everything that Donna has put into this book, which has taken her 4 years to craft, it's a call to action almost every single page. It makes you want to contemplate and think about different things. And, you know, for me, on a very personal basis, it's really important that we start from the ground up, you know, education, parents in schools, not just relying totally on parents. I would love to hear other people's voices, but it's also, I think the educational system also has to be carefully thinking and monitoring. How are we going to teach self-respect? How are we going to
come on? What I would look at, what we see happening right now in the US is that like probably 50% of this country, they don't want anything to be taught in schools with racism and with the history of slavery in this country. And the school boards are completely focused on keeping out anything that can educate people on the history and how much it hurt people of color, what we stand for. We need to understand that. But there's 50% of the population in this country that's against that. And so liberals need to have a lot more, you know, like power in the way they think, and they need to be more proactive. They cannot be apathetic.
No, I think, you know, this picture really is quite a dramatic statement. Men don't protect you.
Yeah.
And trashing out. And the way anymore is trashed out, it almost looks like a lipstick had been drawn up.
You know, I crossed it out and it just.
Yeah. I know, but it does look like a lipstick stick when across it.
Good.
It read anymore and so on. But still, you know, Donna, I'm more of an optimist than you are, and everyone that knows.
How you can be? How can you be an optimist?
I was born it.
Come on, women have targets on their backs in almost 8 states in this country. You know, for having an abortion, they will have to pay $10,000 now. Their lives will be screwed forever. They're being forced to have babies that were put in them by their fathers, their brothers, strangers in an alley. You know, how can you feel optimistic seeing what's happening? How can you feel optimistic when women, like Kurdish women, are self-immolating? They're burning themselves up right now because they are living in such poverty and violence. They have no future. They're being forced to marry at very young ages. How can we be optimistic?
I think if we don't have a bit of optimism, we can't create change. I guess that's where I'm
We need to have more rage. I'm all for rage.
Okay,
let's get the motherfuckers.
I think with that last
Optimism hasn't helped us. It just has. I support you, and I love that the way you are. But it hasn't worked. I used to be, when I was younger, I was like you. Not that way anymore.
I still try to hold on a bit. We do have a few questions before we move on to some other pictures, and I love this picture.
We're almost to the end too.
Yes.
We have something that's very important that we're going to show you. Annie, is this the next picture?
All right, that's okay. Why don't you carry on? We'll run through the pictures.
Yeah,
and then
we've got like one more. This is okay. This is what I think. To me, this is the solution. Women have to carry their handcuffs, their clubs, whatever it takes, you know, to take these guys in, make their citizens arrest, take them off in the barns, whatever you're gonna do, just take them off. And what I'm really excited about, what young women are doing today, women who've experienced violence and sexual assault by these guys, they're not just letting it go and feeling ashamed. They're banding together and they're having their meetings and they're figuring out how to use the internet to help them put these guys behind bars. So they're not waiting for cops anymore. We can't trust the cops. We really can't trust the police, and we can't trust the courts. We cannot trust them. I'm telling you all right now, don't believe that there's any justice for women out there. It doesn't work like that.
Well, with that last statement, I now invite people.
Freedom. Okay. Freedom. We gotta fight for freedom. But we're close to the end. This next picture, and this we're gonna play you a little video. This is what I'm working on right now, which is I'm working on an installation for the New York City Mayor's office. And I've been working on this for a few months. And this is about all of the women and gender nonconforming people that are being put into prison just for defending themselves. The court, the lawyers don't listen to them. Nobody wants to understand what women are going through. And we know that after COVID, 40% of a rise happened with domestic violence. And women had nowhere to go. What are they supposed to do? Are women just supposed to take it?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm creating an installation that's going to be in a park right across from the criminal courts and the family courts. And I want to take my war out to the streets and create something that I hope will push people, be a little bit more provocative for everybody to understand, you know, how unfair it all is for women. I want us to identify with the people who are being criminalized because of them trying to survive. They're criminalized for trying to survive.
start to think about, well, who's being criminalized and why? Why are they behind bars? Why have they lost their freedom? Why are the rates of incarceration for people of color and trans people exponentially higher? How can we stop abusers from weaponizing the system? Why is incarceration the first response? So it's a way of going into the world of women and non-binary people and people of color who have never gotten a fair day in court and now are gone forever. They're forgotten. And there's a wall of silence around them. Let's disrupt the silence.
Yeah. We need to learn to roar more. We need to really get out there and be loud. You know, we really have to make ourselves heard.
Well, I think this film should be everywhere. And we
Well,
get distribution on this.
This is going to be ready in May. It's a big piece. It's 6x4 stainless steel mirror that's encased in concrete.
Wow.
And it has the bars of the prison in Brooklyn that have been superimposed on them. And it'll be on a concrete base, and people can come up and stand in front of it and communicate with all of those really, it's so unfair, so unjust what's happening, and how these people have been put behind bars for defending themselves, criminalized for self-defense.
No, you're absolutely right. And I've had some experience in photographing some women in the UK that were incarcerated for a short period of time, but during that time, their children were taken away from them. So the confusion is pretty awful. And we have to find more ways of constantly getting these stories out and creating a tsunami of revolt against the injustices with
the system. This system.
With that, let's really take.
Absolutely. No, that's it. And so this is the other cool thing that we're doing today.
Yes,
because
we have a copy of it. Can we please have a copy of it?
So this was the way I originally conceived the Book of Holy. It was with my self-portrait made back in 1976 in a bathroom that actually has these bolts of rage coming out of my head maybe 20 years later, after witnessing so much violence and sexual assault against women, the bolts came out of my head on the film. It was like a portrait of Dorian Gray. And so I wanted to put all of these words, because I've been called all of these words: twat, bitch, prude, cunt, slut, old maid, baby killer, because I've had 2 abortions. I've been called every one of these slurs. And I think most of us women have. And it just, it makes me angry. It's like we can just be light about it sometimes and say, okay, bitch is no big word, or cunt. But when you hear it all the time from people who really say it with venom, then it makes you angry. So this should have been the cover. And Daniel Power was fine with it. He didn't have a problem with it because he's he's a wild man. But I did, because I thought, maybe it's going to scare people too much. So I did this cover instead, which underneath this, I embedded a secret message. And under this line is heal the penis. So nobody knows it. Like all these men who look at the book, they don't know why their penis is feeling so good when they're looking at it. Right? And I was fine like that. Okay, let's make the penis feel better for a change. But then I decided it's time to get it out there, like the real.
So this is the real one. What's really
and we're offering this today. We're going to start offering it as a wraparound cover, and on the back, it's got what all of these people have said about the book, which, this is a kind of a grassroots book. And the one thing I have to read to you, this one thing that I really like a lot that John Madden said. He said that that Holy is more Sam Peckinpah than Hitchcock.
And that says a lot. Of course, I bought, when Holy first came out, Donna and I were going to be doing a show about a year or so ago. So I got the first copy, which does not have the jacket at all. So I'm going to buy some more books today. But I love the jacket on this. I think it really says it all. The only thing I wonder in a bookshop whether they would allow half this language to be permitted to be on the top shelf with Playboy.
Daniel, how can we sell this book in airports if we have like,
well, that's the issue. Well, don't you remember when Playboy and Hustler and all of those magazines used to be on the top shelf and sort of a bit of a covering, and all you could see was the masthead of what the name of the magazine was, and nobody dared open up the center spread because they'd be in trouble. They'd be considered a predator, to say the very least. Okay, shall we? Yes, so this is available at Powerhouse right now, so please buy one.
Oh, and the Lucy Award. This is also, thank you, Daniel. You're just like my dad. You're always thinking about the important things.
I'll hold it up again.
This book, actually, this little book, this handmade book, won the Lucy Award for the best single and independently designed book. Daniel put it up for this recognition, and they got it, and it was kind of blew my mind. I just really was blown away.
Well, I'm waiting to see if this is also going to be at all this summer. This will be a fantastic book to have at all. Photo festival.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some questions.
Sure.
It'll be up for 6 months.
Oh, fabulous.
And it's going to be a really heavy piece. We've got to make it like, I've got to make it over, 1,000 pounds. That's the thing, because you can't go into the concrete. So the base has to be very strong. The sculpture itself has to be very heavy and strong. And that's really what we've been dealing with. I don't know if you saw the statue of Diane Arbus. It's outside of the gates at on 5th Avenue by Central Park. Well, they actually, because it's permanent, they were able to take the sidewalk out
and bury it.
And then have like the bolts coming out through there. But we can't do that. It's just a temporary installation, 6 months.
6 months is still a good run with the coverage and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the room? And then, yes?
Is there a region across the world or the state in America that you really want to go back to?
Let me just come right up to you. I want to hear your
Donna has not disappeared. She's just getting closer so we don't have a mic passing around to ask the questions.
Actually, I have two questions in one. So firstly, is there a region in America or like outside of America that you want to go back to, that you've documented? And also, when you cover such tough topics, how do you look after yourself?
Oh, okay. So is there a region that I would like to go back to? To photograph, yeah. I mean, I would really like to get more into the southern states. I've been longing to unbuckle the Bible Belt for quite some time now. So I think that's where I need to take my band of married photographers, and we've really got to go to the deep south. And I really want to go to Texas, and I think we need to take truckloads of people to these states and start monitoring and trying to help and give a hand to all of these women they're like hunted animals there. And so that's where I'd really like to be and spend a lot more time, maybe live there for a while.
Very careful with those gun-toting dudes.
Well, we'll have to take some guys like, the gun-toting. We have to, I mean, look, we have our cameras, and cameras are way more powerful than any guns, We really, it's all about the camera. The camera's the weapon.
And a very powerful one.
For
I think
truth.
we'll all agree. Absolutely.
And how do I take care of myself? Thank you for asking.
Yes, there's another question.
When you figure it out, let me know.
What do you mean? Why? You don't think I'm calm and balanced and happy? You know,
You're always
all my friends. I've got really great friends. I've got an amazing family. My daughter, my grandson. My parents were great people, and all of my friends. I have a huge circle of strong, funny, outrageous people. Claudia's my Claudia, who wrote the introduction to Holy, has always been there. You know, we work tightly as a team. And I've had great assistants like Natalia, who's here right now. So, these are the people who keep me
I think this is a total family affair today. Absolutely fantastic. I feel like an outsider flying in from London and the Inquisition and all the questions I'm asking.
We have Nick Fitzhugh right here in the room. That's pretty cool, He did the conflict film. And all the photographers are doing this kind of work. So, like everybody here, it's just you are a part of my life. You keep me strong. You make me want to keep going on.
Now that's a bit of optimism, just what you said now. You, the family here.
Yeah, but the family all over there. That more people like you out there all over. And a lot of the people, the women especially, are in the Book of Holy. All these people that I love that have allowed me to come into their life and show me what they're going through and let me see them as they're getting stronger and stronger. They're the ones that give me hope, because I see that women don't want to be held down. They don't want to be, they don't want to live in fear. And that's what really makes me want to keep working. It's for them and their grandchildren.
But you can't stop. That's for sure. Any other questions? There's one from the audience, and also we have some questions online as well, which I think is important. I'm passing my mic.
Hi, Donna. It's Rachel.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi. Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yeah. A couple of questions. The other day, I posted something about an abortion clinic where I photographed, and somebody responded saying, "What a terrible country this is for women." And then I started thinking about it and talking to some other people, a woman who runs a human rights organization, and she was saying, I think we're something like 40th or in the 30s and on a scale around the world. What other countries do you think, everybody talks about the Scandinavian countries being good countries for women. In your experience, what are some better countries, and what are some of the things that you see in those countries, like real laws, real like tangible things that make lives for women better?
Well, number one, any country that legalizes abortion is the best country to live in. So now even Mexico has legalized abortion because the women are fighting so hard, and they're getting through to the politicians, and they're getting through to the lawmakers and to the people. So I would say definitely Ireland, Iceland, any countries where abortion is legal. And violence against women will always be a huge problem. We are not going to resolve that very quickly. I know it's going to take way more action on everybody's part to start. Just, we really have to care about what happens to women. And in this country, we don't. And we see that with the hospitals. We see how hard it is for women to get good prenatal care and to get good care when they're, having babies too. So, and it's, definitely a problem for women of color. It's much, much worse for Black and brown women and Indigenous women. I think we have so much work to do in this country, even though it's so diverse, because the white people have had the power for so long, and they, at this point, they're desperate. They will do anything to hold on to it. But that's a good question, but there aren't very many good places for women right now. I don't know how it is in England. Tell us, what do you think?
There's no question there's a bias for the white versus the colored, and also the ethnicity of protection for people of not natural English born, bred for the last 1,000 years, you know, who was going to protect the Afghan coming to England today, and a variety, and it's a very diverse, where I live in London, and it's highly diverse, but there's still an enormous amount of prejudices, and people live in ghettos, and people don't learn to speak English, and people say they don't learn to speak English, they don't know what their rights are. And it's a massive, massive problem. But you know, the more there is activism, the more there is a voice that goes out there, the more that we're heard, and that it triggers action. We have to, just as you rightly say earlier, we all have to work harder to make that voice transform into action, not just have a voice that's out there, whether it's the written voice or the visual voice. And it's not easy, but the vigilance is the most important thing. I think if all of us work together, then there's a better chance of us making a few wins rather than all lost. Oh, I'd love for us now to really open up. I know there are questions that have been asked online, and Donna and I would love to be able to respond to that, especially Donna, not me. I'm just sitting here as the host, please.
I can just ask from here. So as long as you repeat the question after.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We're going to share the mic.
Okay. Hannah asks, why do you think women are facing unprecedented levels of misogyny now?
Is that Hannah Starkey?
Starkey, yes.
Yeah.
The reason that women are facing unprecedented violence right now is that the patriarchy is losing. It's desperate. I mean, you know, women are rising in the world. We definitely are in a good era for women right now. So the stronger that we get, and the more we spread out all over the world, and we're integrated in politics and in business, and that scares the patriot. That scares some men. It scares even some women who are the foot soldiers for the patriarchy. So right now they're feeling it's like, you know, whatever it takes to hold on to their power. That's the problem right now. And I think that we're going to get through it. But, you know, I really do feel hopeful that we are so strong now that we're going to keep moving through it. Yes, that's the only way that I feel optimistic.
You see, you actually look optimistic because you've been smiling the whole time since I've come here and so on. Let's get another question. Donna, you respond.
Rita Nanini asks, I love this, well, she says, I love this body of work. Can you please speak on your experience in finding a publisher for your book?
How did I find a publisher for Holy? You know, I always wanted to work with Powerhouse. It sort of wasn't even a question for me. I felt like they were the bravest publisher out there, and I knew that I wanted to do something that was radically, you know, different from my other two books that I did for Aperture. I wanted the freedom, and Daniel and Craig promised me they'd give me freedom, and they let me do whatever I needed to do. So how could I go anywhere else? I was really lucky that they said they'd take it.
Next question. Next, an anonymous person asks, as an artist, are you inspired by the works of pioneering female photographers from the late 19th and early 20th centuries? Or do you prefer to focus on the present and the future?
No, I don't prefer to focus on the present and the future. I'm totally inspired by all the dead photographers, the powerful women who came before us. Yeah. And I owe everything to them and to all the photographers, not only the women, but I'm obsessed with the dead photographers and the history of photography. And I mean, I have a lot of names that I could say right now, but it's a long list. But no, I learned from the ones that are gone, but the ones that braved the way for me and so many others, women who are out there. Like this is kind of like a Renaissance period for women in photography. There are many, many great women who are crossing over into the battlefields, and they're photographing, and they're making their vision very like present, and they're powerful. They're taking over. So I've always waited for this day for women to become stronger and more dominant in photography. I think there was a kind of it was a little intimidation before, and the men were just so.
I think Donna hit a nail on the head. But one of the things that I've been observing, and I'm sure you've seen as well, is now curators of galleries and museums, the big international ones, are now holding shows of relatively unheard of and unknown female photographers, because in the day, 30, 40, 60, 100 years ago, all the curators were male, and they thought the audiences would not come if they were featuring a female. And at least we're seeing a change in that today, where more and more photographers that are female from long ago are not being forgotten. They're actually being shown, and I think that's really a very good thing. Can we have another question, please?
Hannah Kozak asks, your dad used to say, intimacy breeds contempt. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Hannah, didn't we talk about this in the interview? Yes, he used to say that intimacy, my dad said that intimacy breeds contempt. But my dad had a lot of problems with intimacy and with love and with being faithful. And he made a lot of problems for everybody in his family. So I kind of feel sorry for my dad for saying that, actually. I think that intimacy is what brings us closer together and helps us to understand each other. And I think we need to learn how to be a lot more intimate with everybody, not just our little nuclear families and our little friendships. We really need to spread out more and learn to love one another and love people that we're just meeting. I also want to give a plug to an amazing photographer that I just discovered recently. Her name is Shagaha Yeg Mora Dianajai, and she is an Iranian photographer, young woman who really was trying to understand why so many women were self-immolating, so many Kurdish women. And so she went out there and did her own research and met with these families and with some of the survivors. And she's done this powerful body of work that I don't think she even got funding to do it. It's not about getting funding anymore, really. It's just about going out and doing the work that most people are afraid to even think about. And so let me just spell her name so you can all, it's Shaghayeghh, and her last name is Moradiannej. That's the woman, that's the photographer that we should all be studying and following. But I'm also very excited about photographers like Gaia Scarici, she's been working on a story about domestic violence and battered women for a long time. And now she's going back. She's with the woman who left her abuser. She got out of that relationship. She took her daughter out. And so now Gaia is spending more and more and more time with her. And we need to spend time with the women to show why the women who leave, because we need to show why it's important to leave and how much better women and children will feel when they're not living like prisoners in their own homes.
questions?
Yes, we have a few. So Irina Prentice asks, she has two questions. How does violent confrontation help de-escalate violence against women? And does that increase the lack of safety?
The lack of safety? How, can you say that again?
So how does violent confrontation help de-escalate violence against women? And does that increase the lack of safety?
Well, I've never said that violent confrontation is going to de-escalate the violence. Sometimes because I've ridden with cops quite a bit through the years, and when cops are well trained, they know that domestic violence is the most dangerous call that they'll ever go on. So when they're really well trained and they go into a situation and they're, they de-escalate it by separating the abuser from the woman who's been abused and getting the two stories and trying to understand really what has been happening. That's the best way to de-escalate the violence. Violent confrontations, like going in, like unfortunately, what we see in a lot of the Black and brown communities is that the police go in and they're very violent. And that doesn't de-escalate anything, because then the women become very protective with their abuser and they want the cops to stop. And then they're doing everything they can to protect them, to protect the abuser. So the cops really have to be well trained, not to go into these situations and make it worse.
And the second part of their question had to do with, have you ever found yourself feeling, I'm sorry, the question was deleted, but feeling in danger when you were documenting anyone? Have you ever felt?
Yeah, I mean, that's a funny question. Have I ever felt danger going into any of these situations? I have a lot of times, because I have, a sixth sense about it, about danger. And I know it's always dangerous, especially when you're living in people's homes. But the truth is, the only time I've ever been attacked for taking pictures has been because of a woman who was hiding in the house, who saw me photographing and came out and started beating on me and trying to rip my camera out and rip the flash off. And the police had to threaten her with being maced. And I had to just really calm her down. And these situations are extremely volatile for everybody. And the truth is that when the men are confronted with the police, they're very good at de-escalating and being calm and charming and talking to the police like they're buddies, and it's not a problem. And the women are just, they're angry, they're terrified, they're humiliated. They know what's going to happen as soon as the cops leave. So they're angry. They're not going to de-escalate so quickly. And that's why I think that sometimes women need to be more, they need to be, I'm not saying this is a race, but we need to be more like the Vietnamese were in the Vietnam War. They won that war because they weren't always going around showing everything about how angry they were and exploding and getting angry. They dealt with it in their own way. They were incredible fighters, but they didn't make a big dramatic scene out of it, and we have to be a lot more subtle and understand when we have the power and how we're going to use it.
All right. Joseph Reed asks, why not lead a sex gender rights caravan down the South like the truckers in Ottawa?
Yeah, that's right. That's what we're going to do. I hope you can join us, Joseph Reed. We're going to do that. We're going to unbuckle the Bible belt in our caravan.
I was just wondering whether we'd get arrested like the civil rights movement going to the South.
Arrest us. We'll take our clothes off. Yeah, we'll just be naked.
Oh my God.
All right, and then Sandra Sanders asks, do you think that these kinds of projects exploring domestic violence from the inside are possible today? And how would negotiating access change?
That's a very good question, because it would be very hard for photographers to do the kind of work that I did in Living with the Enemy. back in the 80s, I had the support of magazines. So finally, after years, they trusted me. They let me go out and do any kind of story that I wanted to do. And they paid for me to do it. So there aren't any magazines anymore that will allow a photographer to focus solely on one subject, like domestic violence, and even getting permission from the cops to go with them on these calls, to live in the shelters. I'm the only photographer that's ever been able to actually live in shelters. You know, I think photographers have to really want to do this so badly. And then they have to be good at explaining it. It's not just expecting that you're going to be given the access. Getting the access is like the hardest thing for a photographer who wants to do this kind of work. So you have to be able to explain yourself really well. You get into these situations and keep doing it year after year after year. I've been doing this work for 40 years. And I'm always looking to find new people who will let me into their lives and just let me be with them and understand what's going on. Right now, I'm most concerned with women who are losing their children to the abusers. This is a story that I really want to tell because I think it's a huge problem. Our courts are so corrupted and they're controlled by the fathers' rights groups. And so right now, when a woman gets beaten and she knows that her husband is a pedophile and he's sexually abusing the children, if she says this in court, the courts, the judges will take those children away immediately and give them to the abuser. She'll lose everything. This is the story that I want to tell. And any of you photographers out there who have an interest in doing this, you know, I beg you to take it seriously and figure out how to do this in your own communities, because this is the worst thing that's happening with women and children right now in this country, but even across the world.
I think you said something very important. It's a global challenge, but think local. And photographers that are out there, look within your own community of what's going on. And something we had an earlier conversation is don't rush. Take your time. Let the pictures come to you. Think about what you're photographing and what messages are going out. You can't rush something as sensitive as what this subject matter is. But yes, more photographers, because the visualization of domestic violence, I think, is more powerful than the written word, without question, because it's evidence. It's hard evidence. And we just need more evidence out there to constantly hammer to the judicial system on a global stage and all the different variances and so on. Women cannot be talked down anymore.
And also there's a great book publishing company called Photo Evidence, published Hannah Kozak's book, which is the story of how her mother was beaten into a vegetable state by her partner. And Hannah's book was really hard to get published. Thank Mother of God for Photo Evidence for doing that book. Hannah tried for many years to get the book published. I think everybody has to just keep trying. We can't give up. When we have an important story to tell, we just can't like quit about trying to put it out there in front of people's faces. And once it's published, I mean, still publishing is the most effective way to create like a movement, to get people excited, to show them what's really happening. And so I just urge all the photographers to find the right publishers who will help them get their messages out there. Yeah.
I'm just wondering how we are for time right now, and whether Fran in London is telling me to, because I don't have my any kind of messages going. Sorry? 5 minutes? It's 5:30. Okay, just wanted to check this. I'm not looking at my right. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Of course.
So Anonymous asks, what is the year of the tiger going to bring for the chain breakers?
Oh, the year of the tiger. Well, the year of the tiger, I hear, is a very highly conscious and very energized year. I think it's going to bring good changes. Just like I think the age of Aquarius is going to bring us a lot of important, empowering moments too. But there's still, it's going to be a fight. We're going to have to learn to fight and to organize. I mean, honestly, the year of the tiger is not going to do anything unless we all think like tigers and we all learn to roar and really like stand up for each other, stand up for other women. Don't say, oh, because domestic violence and, you know, or I don't need to worry about abortions because I'm an old woman. I don't care anymore. What the hell? Get out there and fight for all the young women who are like hunted animals right now. Every woman needs to have her autonomy and to be able to shape her own destiny. That's what it's about. And all of the trans people who are being killed just for wanting to live and to love and to be themselves, to feel good in their own bodies. What's that about? Why are there so many cowardly people around us? What are we going to do with those people? We can't be cowed by them. So we have to be like the tigers and really be more ferocious.
So before our last question, you're getting a lot of love from people all around the world right now online, and from Ryan, who says, hi, Grandma.
We love the intimacy of that. So
yeah, Ryan, I love you, Ryan. I do this all for you. Come on, Ryan, you know that.
And so the last question of the night is just a question from an anonymous fan asking what's the story behind the chess pieces that you have on.
Okay, so these are the t-shirts that I had created back in 2006. It's the diamond, the photograph of Diamond standing up to his dad saying, I hate you for hitting my mother. Don't you come back to the house. And then on the back is this, because I created these for the US Army when I did a Living with the Enemy event for them. And we created these t-shirts. Okay, good. Here we go. That's cool. So here we go. So I'll hold it. Okay, you hold carry it on talking. So, you know, this is this, and then turn it around because this is what's really important. When you walk down the street and you have this on your back, and this is why we want to go to Texas, we want to go all over the South in these t-shirts. Domestic Abuse Aware Incorporated, 100306. I used to have a non-for-profit that I had for 15 years called Domestic Abuse Aware. And I was always raising money for shelters. My home was a shelter too. And my phone was a hotline. So women would call me from all over the world. And if they couldn't get any safe place for them and their kids, they would come to my house. So I like to feel powerful when I walk around, even though I'm like a little mouse and I look like I'm very gentle and nice. I'm a killer, you know, and I really want people to know that when they see that domestic abuse aware, we've got to be aware of the abuse around us all the time. Don't be naive. That's what's hurting us all, is being naive and complacent and apathetic. No, we can't. So this is, we're offering, we've got some of these t-shirts, a few of them available. I've got about 20 still in my house at home in New York City. And we're going to start sending them out all around. You know, maybe we'll need to make more. We'll have to be on March wearing one of these. Yeah, definitely. March.
There was also a few questions online about the covers for the books, which, yes, as an answer to the question, you can buy separately if you already own a book.
Absolutely. You can buy the new paper book flap cover. You can order it from my website, which is donnaferrato.com. We'll send it to you anywhere. They're $50. And they're, I don't know, they're pretty cool. It's like a piece of art. It was designed by Mason Dowling. Amazing, Claudia's nephew. Yeah, this is all a big family project, you know, the whole thing, family and friends.
I think when everybody gets their own personal copy of Holy, you're going to see threaded throughout that book Donna's extended family. It doesn't have to be blood relations, but her relationships and long-term relationships with writers, and designers is actually quite extraordinary. And it has tremendous liveliness that threads throughout the entire book of Holy. At least that's what I was picking up, and it gives a lot of pleasure.
And my mom too. My mom is throughout the book. My mom, I'm really like, my mom is, to me, she is the mother of God. And she stood up for her rights. She was a great mother. She kind of was treated unfairly, but she had so much dignity and integrity, and she stuck with it for so many years with a husband who was a really big rascal. And he, you know, he betrayed her far too many times. But she's in my heart. She died 3 years ago. I talk to her every day, and she's in the Book of Holy, and as well as Fanny is in the Book of Holy too. I mean, you see Fanny giving birth, and for Fanny giving birth to Ryan, that was the apex of my life, really. She was born at home. Fanny was born at home. Ryan was born at home. We believe in taking the power away from the establishments, the medical establishment, you know, just do everything. We've got to do everything on our own. We got to go off the grid. That's why I think we're going to win this war. Now let's roar. Come on. Here you roar. That would be louder than the subway.
Oh, Donna, this has been so much fun. I've been so looking forward to coming to New York and to do the first live show that we've actually had. But hearing you talk about all the different experiences and your extraordinary passion, and it is about passion. If you don't have the passion to fuel the energy to do the kind of work you do, it's never going to be there. So I hope everyone that is tuned in is also going to be impassioned and stand up and do something. And it's one thing saying, oh, it was a very nice talk and I'm very entertained and all the rest. We want action. Donna wants action. She wants all of us to actually stand up and fight for something that has too long dragged on with no support whatsoever. So thank you so much, Donna, for the most amazing talk today. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. Thank you all for coming today in this filthy rain. At least the snow is gone.
It was beautiful rain.
Yeah, it's great. It was so good to know some of the snow. I'm actually out of my snow boots and so on. And thank you all online for tuning in. We're very grateful indeed. I want to also thank Pranvera Smith, founder of the Frontline, who makes everything like this possible. And as I started out earlier to say, we do Looking at the Still Image is a series that the Frontline produces, and I am the interviewer on a monthly basis. It keeps me off the streets as a middle-aged hustler, amongst other things, aside from being a photographer. And our next talk is going to actually feature fashion photographers, and you'll hear all about it with the newsletters that Pranvera sends out. So thank you all very much, and we say goodbye from the Powerhouse and all the hospitality.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Daniel. You are a star.
Chris, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're going to start drinking wine.
Yeah, we're going to have a party now. Wish you all could be here.
Yeah, and we're going to party on down, not like Bojo. Bojo as in Boris Johnson, who has Good night, everybody in London.
Cheerio.
We're going to leave the Powerhouse to enjoy the hospitality. I'm just going to play the video that I wasn't able to play earlier. So just bear with me for one last moment.
For me, the mirror has always been a portal to deeper awareness about unjust incarceration. The wall of silence is a response to an open call from the New York City Mayor's office that inspires activism about the criminalization of survivors of gender-based violence. You know, I believe that through a mirror, we are able to penetrate worlds that we've never experienced in our lives. And then get other people to stand in front of it and then start to think about, well, who's being criminalized and why? Why are they behind bars? Why have they lost their freedom? Why are the rates of incarceration for people of color and trans people exponentially higher? How can we stop abusers from weaponizing the system? Why is incarceration the first response? So it's a way of going into the world of women and non-binary people and people of color who have never gotten a fair day in court and now are gone forever. They're forgotten. And there's a wall of silence around them. Let's disrupt the silence.
Thanks very much.